Welcome to the Past, Present, and Occult podcast. This is your host, Emiliano Noriega-Petti. In this episode, I tell you my spiritual journey. When I was 13 years old, my father died. This affected me more than I cared to admit at the time, and it is where my interest in religion and spirituality began. I've always loved my parents, and I'm grateful for them. I also love my boyfriend, William, very much. The idea that after death I might never spend another moment with these people I love bothered me. As an atheist at the time, and after my father's passing, my first mountain to climb was belief in an existence after death. I really didn't know where to begin, but 3 years later in 2006 there were more bookstores, and I could drive, so I went to Borders Books. I suppose I started with books because I missed my dad reading to me, and at the end of his teaching career, he had become a librarian. Their metaphysical section was wonderful, and I always found something new to buy. One of the first books I picked up happened to be on Wicca. So for the remainder of my time at Don Bosco Tech, a Catholic all-boys school, I was a Wiccan. The system worked for me at the time, and I loved how it scared the Catholics. However, upon reaching college and not getting any pushback for being Wiccan, I realized I probably only enjoyed the label as a way to antagonize my peers. In reality, though, my beliefs had begun to change. While at UC Santa Barbara from 2009 to 2014, yes, I took longer, I studied psychology, sociology, and history before I chose religious studies as my major. I had been experimenting with various faiths and practices at this time before around my junior year, I became interested in visiting the local Catholic church. I know, me and church, but I was curious to go where my interest was leading. Also, while in high school, I had volunteered at Seelai Temple in Hacienda Heights for 2 years. This was during my atheist Wiccan phase, and since I didn't feel uncomfortable visiting then, although I didn't believe in what they believed in, I decided that even though I wasn't sure what I believe now, if I felt like going there, I might as well follow the same instinct that I had followed before. Also, at least to begin with, since I was going to Santa Barbara, which is a party school, I really enjoyed that St. Mark's was a lot quieter than a lot of the other places I could spend my time. One evening, while simply relaxing in the seats, I had, for lack of a better word, a religious event. Now, let me preface this by saying I was very tired at this point in the day. Anyhow, I began to smell a mix of hay and wet earth. It reminded me of where my dad and I had used to go hiking. Then I distantly heard a voice. It was a distinct voice because it sounded like a woman's. I couldn't make out any of the words, so I went looking for it as I was sure I was alone. Finding no one, I returned to my seat and then went home. When I arrived at my room, lying on my bed was the rosary my grandmother had given me years ago. This was impossible since I did not pack it and certainly had not left it on my bed, as I was sure it was in the drawer by my other bed that was at my mother's house. Now let me tell you, at this point, all of the reading and my interest in religion was making me feel, wow, what might be going on here? I considered my options, of which there seemed to be two. The first involves the rosary ending up in my room by some type of accident or mistake. Just because I didn't mean to pack it doesn't mean it couldn't have somehow ended up in there. I don't know. Maybe my mom thought she was doing me a favor by packing religious memorabilia since I was studying religion. However, I know that I certainly hadn't left it on my bed, the door to my room was locked, and nobody else, friend, foe, or roommate knew that I had it. So both of the options that I had seemed insane. Either I had to believe that somebody knew I had the rosary, went into my room, broke into it without leaving a sign, found the rosary, and then placed it on my bed. Another thing I had to believe is it just happened to coincide with this night of all nights. The other option I had was God was finally making a real effort to speak to me. So, since I knew the Our Father and Hail Mary, I decided I would test the moment by praying one of the former and 3 of the latter. Upon finishing the final Hail Mary, I again heard a woman's voice, and I heard it say, "Be kinder to yourself, be good to others, do something important." Now, given the extremely Catholic context this all occurred in, you may not be shocked by my following mistake. That event made me certain at that time that God was calling me to be a Catholic priest. Yes, the gay, pot-smoking, ex-atheist, ex-Wiccan, ex-whatever else was sure he was meant to become a Catholic priest. For the next 2 years, I devoted my life to this purpose. I faithfully prayed, read my Bible, led a rosary group, went to Mass, and finally ended up living with the Carmelites in Chicago for a short while. They were not the only group I considered. I also stayed with the Salesians, Franciscans, and Jesuits. Yet it would again be another night that would change my path. I was staying at the Salesians for a vocations retreat and was having trouble sleeping. This was and still is actually very rare for me because ever since turning 25, I have found it rather easy to fall asleep when I need to. Thank goodness. Anyhow, after hours of not sleeping, it was around 2 a.m. and I had had enough. So I drove home, stopping by my grandparents' old church for a prayer. While I was there, a priest entered the church. He was wearing a black habit trimmed in white. We talked for a long time about my vocation, God, what I wanted out of life, and a few other things. He then told me something I found out of character for a Catholic priest, and that was, there is more than one gate into heaven, more than one path into the divine. When I asked, what about that part in the Bible that says, none come to the Father except through me, his response was, truth is light, and in our world, light comes in colors. We lose ourselves debating the right shade while ignoring all the colors have the same source. Go where you belong and not where you think you should be. Now, there I was, 26 years old, and yet again feeling I was at square one. I made the decision to focus more on work and life. I continued praying, meditating, and ritual work, but let it take over my life less. During this period of relaxation, I moved to Pennsylvania for 2 years. It was there that I chose to become a Freemason. Oh, I forgot to mention that earlier while I was in college, I became familiar with and visited the OTO. For those of you who don't know them, they are a group of occultists who work in a lodge structure and practice magic based on the theories and philosophy of Aleister Crowley. As a group, I found them hard to work with, but I did enjoy what they were interested in and what they would talk about. Anyhow, I was aware of who the Freemasons were and what they did. I liked that they were non-denominational and made up of many different kinds of people. Also, with my knowledge of history, I knew the founders of the Golden Dawn and similar groups were Freemasons, and I was curious to join the group from which so many amazing traditions had sprung. Becoming a Freemason in Pennsylvania was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Their degree rituals were truly exceptional and meaningful. I received my 3rd degree in 2018, and since then have moved back to California, where I am a member of Three Great Lights Lodge number 323 in Whittier, California. That was back in 2021. In 2020, when the pandemic gave us all some extra time, I developed the spiritual system which I now make use of and teach. Through a combination of prayer and meditation, I had a series of religious experiences. These experiences opened me up to the truth. Now, I do wish this was the part of the story where I tell you what the truth is, but I can't, and that's because the truth is ultimately an experience, which can only be confused or ruined by any attempt at explanation. My first goal now is to daily return to this place of truth for longer periods of time until I can remain there constantly. My second goal is to help as many people as I can find get to the same place that I have. I want all of us to be able to experience the truth. My path is my own, just as your path is your own. I'm a guide, not a guru, and I'm here to help you find the truth, not my truth. If you would like to know the truth and end suffering, there is a way. Listen carefully. All things are temporary or impermanent. All joys temporary, all sorrows temporary, all lives temporary, all is temporary. All reality is an illusion. What we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch occurs in our minds. The mind is the realm of dreams and madness. The land of the unreal is where what we call the real also resides. Are you certain where one begins and the other ends? One should develop their minds through meditation. One should develop a system of spiritual practice. True peace and perfect happiness are possible for anyone. True peace and perfect happiness are one of the truly real experiences and constants that we can have in our lives. Spirituality does not require you to abandon love, family, or the world in order to progress, although giving them up can often make the path easier. You may ask yourself, why then do all the other paths have so many restrictions? It is because in the past people found their truth, mistook it for the truth, and then began preaching and teaching it as such. What people in the world need are guides. People should be encouraged and helped to find their own unique way into the truth. Future episodes of this podcast will run closer to 40 minutes. However, I thought just for the sake of a brief introduction, so that you can know where all of this advice is coming from, 10 minutes was probably appropriate enough to let you know who I am, where I came from, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. However, if you have any further questions about the story I've told you today, like with any other you'll hear in the future, please feel free to ask me any questions you have. So, my fellow seekers, in this podcast, my hope is that I can assist you as best as possible by showing you the many paths there are and the many ways to walk them. Thanks for listening. May your days be peaceful, and don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.